Hi again, welcome to another IPD Tech session. Today we'll be removing the instrument cluster to replace the backlighting bulbs and repair the broken odometer in this 850. This instructional covers all years 93 to 97 and we'll begin by taking off the dash pad. There's 7 screws, which are Torx 25, that hold on the dash pad on the left side. They're located 1 and 2 behind the left side window vent, 3 behind the left vent, 4 and 5 underneath the dash, 6 and 7 behind the center vents. To take off the 2 Torx fasteners on the left side window vent, start by taking the cap off of the screw, remove the screw from the dash, and using a small flat blade, pop the vent cover up out of the dashboard and pull it back slightly to remove it. You can now access the remaining Torx fastener in this location. To get the third screw out, you'll need a small flat blade to pry the vent out of its hole. You'll need to be careful as you pry it out not to scratch anything. The third screw is located at the top of the dash vent and it's in at an angle. Take out screws 4 and 5. They're located under the dash bezel. Screws number 6 and 7 are just like number 3. Lift the dash pad up and prop it up on the left side. Give yourself some additional access by pulling the steering wheel down and away from the dashboard. Now we can remove the 2 clips and the electrical connectors from the instrument cluster. Note that some models will have a third electrical connector at the base of the cluster. For clusters with a turbo gauge, remove the rubber line and plastic elbow from the brass nipple on the back of the cluster. Pull the instrument cluster up and over the trim to get it out. Be careful not to scratch the lens because it is a tight fit. Just a little bit of wiggling and it'll come right out. Now with the instrument cluster out of the car, we'll proceed to replacing the backlighting bulbs and go ahead and repair the odometer. There's 4 main bulbs at the back of the cluster, plus the bulb at the bottom for the clock. You'll note that the blue lamp holders are for the directional indicators and the warning lights. To remove the bulb, rotate the holder 90 degrees and pull it straight out. You can pull the bulb right out of the socket at this point. There's 2 different wattages of bulbs used in the backlighting on the instrument cluster, 3 watt and 5 watt. You'll need to take a look at the printing on the bulb to determine which one you've got. As you can see, this one is 3 watt. Blue lamp holders are done the same way. To start disassembly, begin by removing the 9 Torx 10 screws around the perimeter. For clusters with a turbo gauge, remove the 8mm nut on the back of the cluster from the brass nipple. Take out the 2 Torx 10 screws next to the clock. However, the 2 clock screws do not need to be removed. and lift the instrument cluster off of the lens. The next step is to remove the instrument cluster face by carefully prying up around the perimeter very gently. To remove the odometer, take off the 3 Torx 8 screws at the back of the cluster. With the odometer removed from the car, we'll start by taking off the drive motor and the 2 Phillips heads that hold it in place. With the 2 screws out, go ahead and pull the motor directly up and out and off of the odometer. You can see the tooth broken off the smaller gear, which is the cause of the odometer not working. Remove the white plastic plate that the odometer gear sits on. Go ahead and remove the gear from its plastic base, and be sure to take any of the broken gear teeth off as well. If the plate looks a little dry, put a touch of Vaseline on it as you install the IPD gear to ensure smooth operation. You'll notice the blue gear on the back of the plastic plate that sets in between 2 transparent gears in the odometer housing. When you install the plate, be sure to rotate it just a bit until it sits in nice and flush. Now it's time to install the drive motor back on the odometer. You'll notice that the drive motor has a little gear on the end of it. You'll need to wiggle it just a little bit as you install it so the teeth mesh. And we'll put in the 2 Phillips head screws that hold the drive motor to the odometer. When installing the odometer back into the instrument cluster, you'll notice that there's 4 electrical pins here and the corresponding socket that the odometer plugs into. When installing the odometer, it's very important that these plug in and make good contact. With the odometer in place, hold it in position while you rotate the instrument cluster around and install the 3 Torx 8 screws that hold it in position. Turn the instrument cluster around and take the faceplate from the dashboard. Notice that it's got electrical pin connectors in the back, which correspond to recessed slots in the instrument cluster housing. When placing the faceplate on, be sure to line them up and carefully press all the pins into place. Place the lens back onto the top of the instrument cluster housing and turn it over. Now we'll reinstall the 9 Torx tins that went around the perimeter and the 2 Torx tin screws that were near the clock. For vehicles with a cluster with a turbo gauge, reinstall the 8mm nut back onto the turbo gauge nipple at the back of the cluster. Now let's reinstall the instrument cluster back into the dash. For vehicles with a turbo gauge, reconnect the rubber line and plastic elbow on the back of the cluster. Tighten back the clips that hold the instrument cluster into place and reinstall any of the electrical connectors that you've taken out. Pull the dashboard slightly forward and back down to set it back into place. Reinstall the 2 screws in the center vents. Now reinstall the 2 screws under the instrument cluster bezel. Now let's reinstall the screw in the left side vent. And now let's install the screw for the left side dash. Now we'll install the side window vent cover. And the screw that goes through it. And finally the cap that covers it. Snap all of your vents back into place.